Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, I have Women International Master Svitlana with us today. And so she's going to share her chess story and walk us through one of her best games today. Welcome, welcome. I'm excited to have you. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well, I'm doing well, I'm doing well. Excellent. All right, so why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about how you got started with chess. So when did you start playing chess and what was it about the game that caught your attention?
Well, I've been playing chess for 8 years already. So ever since I was 8 years old, I started playing back in my home country in Ukraine. And there, chess is really popular and many people there know how to play and play recreationally. So that's where I got taught and played for about a year and a half. And that's where I learned all the basics and the foundation. And although Ukraine did put a start to my chess journey, most of my development as a player happened here in Canada. So when my family moved here, it was a big change. It was a new place, new people, foreign languages, and I barely spoke English or French. So it was a completely new environment that I had to adapt to. And chess was one of the key things actually that helped me do it. Um, as you all know, chess is such an international game that anyone can play, and there are no age, gender, or cultural boundaries. And that's what I really love about the game. And without me knowing English or French and being a newcomer to this country, I was still welcomed everywhere at every chess club and met so many interesting people and made friends because we were all passionate about the same game. So to me, chess is something really special, and that was just one of the many reasons during the journey of why I came to loving the game so much.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So 8 years ago, that's when you started playing chess. So that's really not too long ago. So you've done very well. So when did you move to Canada? How long ago did you move to Canada?
I moved in 2013, 2014, so about 6, 7 years ago.
Oh, okay, okay. And so you didn't know how to speak English, you didn't know how to speak French,
Barely.
and you moved here and you speak so fluently. It's hard to believe that you were not born speaking English. But that's awesome, that's awesome. So that's good. So who introduced you to chess? Was it your mom, your dad? Do you have other family members playing the game? So how did you get started in that respect?
Um, Nobody in my family was playing chess competitively ever, but I basically got taught the first few moves by my dad and by my great grandfather. He was the one that kind of introduced the idea to me. It's a long story, but basically he found a newspaper article about a girl who was about my age and she was a chess champion, and he showed the newspaper article to my parents, and that's when that's how we kind of first got the idea of me trying to play chess.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So share a little bit about your first competitive tournament. When did that happen for you?
It
Was
was
it when you moved to Canada or was that back in Ukraine?
back in Ukraine. Yeah, I played there for a year and a half.
Okay. So were you mostly playing in a chess club or were you playing in other tournaments? So tell us a little bit about your first tournament.
Yeah, it was just at a club in Ukraine. It wasn't really anything big, just some club tournaments that I played in.
Okay, okay. So what role did coaches, I don't know if you had a coach growing up when you started playing chess. So tell us a little bit about that. Who taught you? Were you self-studying yourself, or do you have a coach that was teaching you and coaching you along the way?
Um, yeah, I had my very first coach for many years, maybe 4 or even 5, and I kept taking lessons with him even after I moved away from Ukraine, and now now I take group and individual lessons with a Romanian grandmaster, Gheorghe Sebo, and yeah, and all throughout the way, my coaches and parents too have always been supporting me. I had a really big impact on my chess, and I owe it all to them.
But that's good. That's good. And that's one thing I hear from all players: the role that the parents played. Um, and I'd like to dive a little bit into that. So tell me a little bit about that. How important was it for your parents to support you back in Ukraine and even when you moved here in Canada? Tell us a little bit about the support you got from your parents in pursuing chess.
They've been supporting my chess all throughout, even with bringing me to tournaments, waiting for me in the waiting hall, and getting me all the coaches, and just even most important, probably just psychological support too. And yeah, with my whole family, they've always been really supportive, and now we're even teaching the game to my little brother too.
Oh, how old is your brother?
He's 8.
Oh, he's 8. Okay. Is he interested in the game?
Yeah, he's interested. He started playing a bit in the past year, and I'm hoping he can get more into it.
Is he looking forward to winning his first game against you at some point?
I think so. I think so.
Okay, okay, all right. That'll be exciting for him, I'm sure. Um, so, so tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you had. I know you've done very well progressing in chess, particularly when you moved here. So tell us a little bit about that journey in terms of how you progressed in chess when you got to your first maybe 2000 rating or 1800 or 1500 rating. Just tell us a little bit about that story.
Or did you ask about the challenges? Or?
That's right. So
Yeah.
some of the challenges along the way as you were progressing in chess.
Well, if we're talking about the very beginning, at first I remember one of the challenges was I remember getting really upset when I was losing. I mean, it wasn't a huge issue. I know people who've had it way worse, but I do remember that made me super unhappy. And I know that's something a lot of kids experience as well. But sometime later, I understood that with every lost game, you can learn more from it than from a won one, actually. So now I actually value my losses because I understand that there's a lesson to be learned from it, and that it only helps you get better at the end of the day. Of course, I'm obviously not happy when I lose, but at least now I think that's one of the things chess taught me is how to handle losses well, which I think is a pretty important life skill as well. So yeah, I've even had streaks of just bad tournaments, and I've seen people who've encountered that as well, and they were giving up and even quitting chess altogether. But I think in chess, just like in everything, there's ups and downs, and everyone at some point will encounter those bad times. So I think one of the most important things when starting chess, and especially as a child, is not to get those losses get to you, and learn from them, because at the end of the day, it's only going to help you build your character and make you a better player.
Oh, wonderful. I think that is such an important lesson. And so for those that are listening, I want you to really clue into this point that Svitlana is making, that you should learn from your losses, right? And it's so important because those losses will come, those losses will happen. But again, you need to change your perspective and learn from them rather than just giving up. So that is an important point. Thank you for sharing that. So tell us a little bit about your journey in this tournament. I know chess is mostly dominated by men, and you as a lady, as a woman playing in such a game that is dominated by men, I'm sure you would have had to face some hurdles, crossing, or dealing with these challenges. Whether it is people discounting you, never taking you serious in the game. So why don't you share a little bit about that story, some of the challenges and obstacles you've had to face as a woman playing in a sport that is dominated by men?
I mean, it is true that that it's a very male dominated sport, and especially here in Canada, I find that the numbers are even the numbers of women playing chess are even smaller than in compared to maybe even Ukraine. There, I noticed a lot more women playing than here. But honestly, I never really. It was never really an issue because, and at least for me, because I think I just grew up in a very supportive community, and our chess club here in Ottawa, it's a pretty big club. It's called the RA Center. We had very few girls. I think ever since the beginning, it was just it was Chiyu Zhou, who moved away to Toronto now, but it was just her and it was just me, and I think we were pretty much the only consistent girls who kept playing. But like I said, our club was always very supportive, and I'm lucky to never have encountered those problems. I know other people I know other people have, and especially it was a big problem in the past, but I think over the years it's been getting a lot better, and now I think more girls than ever are getting into chess. So I think for me it was mostly a positive experience. I know that's not the case for everyone, but I really think it's getting a lot better nowadays.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. And I think that's one of the things where we are working on, trying to get more girls to play the game. It's been such a challenge in Canada getting girls into chess. But we'll continue to work on that. All right, excellent. So tell us a little bit about your first title. I believe that was the FM title, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
woman FIDE master.
Woman Freedom Master. Okay, tell us a little bit about that. How challenging was it to get that title?
I got it by playing in the North American Championships, and I was playing in the girls under 16 section. I think I was 12 back then, and I mean it was a really tough tournament. There were many really strong players there from Canada, US, Mexico, and yeah, I remember that as being a very challenging tournament, but also a very interesting one, because that was my first North American tournament that I've played in, and I think it was one of the first probably like big international events that I've played in. So yeah, it was a tough tournament, but it was a really valuable experience, and I was really happy at the time to have won it, and I still am.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I know you've represented Canada. I believe you've represented Canada in some Olympics. Is that correct or no?
Yes, I played on the women Olympiad team in 2018, and then in the youth Olympiad team last year.
Oh, okay. So 2018 was the first and only one you've done so far, right?
Yes, but actually, we'll be playing again in a few weeks in the FIDE online Olympiad event. So since the Olympiad couldn't have been held in person this year, they made the online event. So yeah, well, I'll be playing there. So everyone is welcome to follow the games and support Team Canada.
That's right. When does that start again? What dates?
In last 2 weeks of August, or maybe just last week. It's around the 20th, August 20th, okay. Somewhere around that.
Okay, excellent. So how are you preparing for that?
Mostly just playing online and practicing that that time control that I'm not really used to. It's gonna be rapid.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay, okay.
just mostly playing online.
All right, excellent, excellent. No, certainly we're going to be following that. We're going to be watching that closely and certainly cheering for the Canadian team. So tell us a little bit about the first one, the 2018 Olympiad. How was your experience in that event?
Yeah, that was my first. That was my first Olympiad, and it was a wonderful experience. I was very excited to see like some of the most top players in the world all gathered in one place. So it's definitely an unforgettable experience. I got to meet a lot of new people. Again, made a lot of friends, and it was a good bonding experience with my team as well.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. How did you guys do in that tournament? How did the Canadian team fare in that tournament?
I think I don't remember the final standings,
Okay.
but we finished. I don't remember in exactly which place we finished in, but I think it was a pretty good tournament for everyone. I don't remember people like I don't remember anyone doing really badly. I think everyone performed at around their strength, and team wise as well. I think we finished somewhere really close to our starting rank. Women did, and I think men did as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we all played at above our strength. We got a bit unlucky with our pairings sometimes, but yeah, I think it was a good learning experience for everyone. At least for me, it was.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so I know in 2018 you had a chance to go to, I think it was St. Louis, right, to play the Judith Boga Foundational Tournament. And I know you did very well in that tournament as well. Finished with a prize, I believe.
Yeah, I shared first place.
That's right. That's right. You shared first place, so that was a good tournament. Tell us a little bit about that tournament. What was your experience in that tournament? You had some very good games, good results. So share a little bit about your experience.
Oh yeah, that was an amazing tournament as well. What I think is really special about those tournaments that the Susan Polgar Foundation organizes is that at least this event was an all-girls tournament, and yeah, it was amazing to see so many girls playing in one tournament, and I think Susan Polgar herself and her foundation do a great job at making more girls come into chess and stay in it as well. So I finished with 5 out of 6, I believe. I had 2 draws there, and shared first place with a few other girls, and Susan awarded all of us scholarships to the university that it was held at, Webster University.
That's right.
So yeah, that was really nice of her. I'm pretty sure she gives probably the most generous prizes for any girls tournament that I've ever seen or been to. And yeah, that's actually probably was one of my favorite tournaments that I've ever been to. She does it every year, except this year again it was
online.
Yeah, so it's a tournament that I come back to every year because it's just filled with so many great memories, and I really look up to Susan as a player and just as a person in general. I think she's just a really big inspiration for basically every girl in chess.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was a great tournament, and that's one of the reasons why we support it here and try to get as many Canadian girls involved as much as we can. So that's awesome. I'm glad you shared and enjoyed that experience. Okay, so tell us about your WIM title. I know that's a big milestone to reach. And so tell us a little bit about that. When did you get your first norm? How many norms do you need for that? It's 3, right?
Yeah, you need
Okay.
3 norms,
Okay.
which the first one I got along with my WFM title at the
Okay.
North American for under 16 girls. That was the first one. The second one was at another junior North American. And I actually didn't end up needing a third norm because at the North American under 18, they just give a direct title for first place.
Oh, okay.
Which I got back in Kingston last summer.
Oh, wow, you finished first. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Congrats. That's cool. That's cool. So how has chess transformed your life? I know that's a question I love to ask because I know sometimes some people say, oh, chess is a waste of time. Other people say, well, there are some key lessons to learn from chess. But you have been playing chess for so many years now. So tell us a little bit, how has chess transformed your life?
Yeah, I think chess really helped me grow a lot as a person, and it's not just professional growth as in improving at the game, but really more so personal growth too. So firstly, some of the technical skills that I've learned because of chess were probably decision making, organization, time management was a big one. Ever since I've started high school, and I'm doing the International Baccalaureate program, which is known to be challenging and a big time commitment. So with that, it's been hard to manage time with studying and playing in chess tournaments at the same time. And many of my friends were always surprised as to how I'm playing tournaments, coaching students, and catching up with school at the same time. But I think it's a skill that chess has given me, this organization and time management that helped me a lot to do it. So I think it teaches a lot of important life skills, like I said, with handling losses, and can be organization, time management, honestly, anything. And apart from that, I think chess teaches some personal skills as well. For me, it was, I think, by going to so many places around the world for tournaments and meeting so many people from different cultures and backgrounds, it just made me more open-minded in general and kind of helped me understand the world better. So yeah, and I think you've asked about students, about my lessons. I mean, now I'm trying. Chess also kind of gave me an opportunity to try myself in a new role, in a role of a chess coach too. So I've been teaching students for a few years already, and it's something I've been doing more and more lately, and I'm enjoying this new role just as much as I enjoy being a player. So like I said, in all these years of playing, I think chess has transformed me a lot as a person and gave me growth and opportunities in many different aspects of life. So it didn't just help personally, it also helped academically, get a university scholarship, and in basically everything.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So one of the struggles, and you know, one of the biggest challenges for a lot of chess players is they find it challenging trying to multitask, right? Obviously, you are a good chess player. You are also a good student. A lot of people will either go all in with chess, or they go all in with their studies. Something we have to suffer. But you have sort of managed it very well. You've been a good chess player as well as a good student. Do you have any tips in terms of people that are looking up to you? How have you done it? How have you been able to keep keep that balance where you are an excellent student and also an excellent chess player? So what have you done? What's the trick?
Um, I don't really think there is a specific trick. I think it's mostly just about like time management and setting up your priorities. And I know a lot of people either go, like you said, full time with their chess or full time with their studies, and I think there's nothing wrong with that, because then they end up being really, really successful in whatever they 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 put in more time into. And I've been trying to do both because I can't really imagine my life without chess, but I'm also not planning to make it my career. So I also need to focus on school as well. So I think it's mostly just about managing your time and setting up what your priorities are. And um, yeah, it's challenging sometimes when I would have to go to tournaments. And in my grade 11 year, I skipped a total of, I think, 7 weeks out of the first 8 weeks of school because
Wow.
I had tournaments, and it was challenging coming back, but I tried to do all the work ahead of time. And so it all turned out okay. Um, and I know a lot of other Canadian players that do the same as me. Um, and yeah, it is possible, but I think for people who are trying to go with chess professionally, it's and they would probably rather either be homeschooled or spend most of their time on chess, which I kind of wish I could do, but I think I have a slightly different path.
All right, that's good. That's good. All right, so for the young players that are there listening and looking up to you, looking up to improving their chess, what 3 tips can you give them for someone that is coming up and looking to improve their chess? What are the 3 tips you can give them in their journey? Chess.
3 simple tips. Well, if we're talking about chess training specifically, I probably recommend doing lots of tactics, at least from what I've seen, and up until maybe 1700 level or 1600, maybe 80% of the games get decided in a tactical way. So that would be my advice, is to do a lot of tactics as part of the training.
Mm-hmm.
Another more psychological thing would be not to judge your opponent by their rating, and just not focus too much on ratings in general. Maybe this applies mostly to kids, because I know often even my students, they often get scared by the number. And I remember myself too. I used to pay a lot of attention to them, and every time I played a higher rated opponent, you could just say that I lost the game before I even started playing. It was just all psychological. So I think that my second advice would be just treat ratings as a relative number, and don't focus on them too much. Don't be upset with your own, and don't pay too much attention at other people's, because all that matters is just how you play the game, that one game. And last, and I think probably most important thing that will really help is to analyze your own games, because I think that's the best possible way to pinpoint all your strengths and weaknesses. Some of my students often forget, or they don't even want to analyze the games that they lost because they're upset about it or whatever. But I still try to convince them to do it, because, as I've said, you can learn the most from your losses, and that's just a way to make sure you don't make the same mistakes again. So I think analyzing your games is also a really big one, because that really gives you a clear idea of what you need to work on and what plan you need to develop for yourself to keep improving.
Well, that's good. That's good. Thank you. And so, just to underscore some of the points you've made. So first, they should practice their tactics. I think that is always important, so that they don't miss the opportunities when it shows up in their game. So if you're listening, practice tactics, and if you can, do it every day. So that's good. Second point, just ignore the ratings of your opponent. Just focus on your game. You don't want to lose your game before you even start it, all right? And so discount ratings, just focus on your game, play your best. And finally, the third point is to analyze your game yourself. And I think that was a point you made earlier. You can learn a lot from your losses. And so it's always good to review your games just to learn and to continue to improve yourself. So that's good. Those are awesome points. Thank you for that. Okay, so tell us, do you have any favorite chess books that you've read in the past?
Well, I don't have one single book that I can point out, but I do have a favorite set of books, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I really like Judith Polgar's trilogy. They're called How I Beat Fischer's Record, From GM to Top 10, and A Game of Queens. There's 3 books. So it's a set of 3 books, but they can also be read separately. Not only do they have beautiful games, but I also find her story very inspiring, because to me, I said before, the Polgar sisters are the people who I really look up to, because they basically did the impossible, and just also because of how much they do and did and keep doing for women's chess. So for those reasons, and the material in the books is amazing as well, I'd name this as my favorite set of books. And another one, which is maybe more technical, and with it's with less stories, and it's more just focusing on the chess itself, would be the Grandmaster Preparation series by Jacob Aagaard. He's also one of my favorite authors. Yeah, so those are also very informative, and I'd highly recommend them as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing those. We'll put a link to this video for those. All right, excellent. So tell us, what is your favorite opening as white?
Well, that's a tough question, to be honest, because I've played many things with every color throughout my career, and I constantly change it up as well. So I've never really had just one specific thing that I was always playing. I was always more of a surprise or improvising type of player, and I never really focused too much on my openings in my training either. But I mean, if I had to pick something as white, I probably lean towards E4 systems as white.
Okay. So would you consider yourself an aggressive attacking player, or no?
I don't exactly know what my style is, because, like I said, it always changes. But I do like dynamic. If I had to pick, yeah, I do like dynamic play.
Okay. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Makes sense. What about us? So probably as black, you probably don't have any favorite.
Well, if I had to pick one, I would probably say King's Indian Defense as black.
Okay.
But honestly, I like switching it up. I just think it's more fun that way.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I know you've talked about your favorite person you look up to in the world stage, the Polgar sisters, I believe. Okay, so that's good. All right. So tell us, I know you talked about your coaching a couple of times. So I'm glad that you got into coaching. You're coaching kids. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about your coaching, chess coaching career. What kind of kids do you teach? How do you deliver your training program? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I started teaching a few years ago, and I've been really enjoying it so far. I have a few students. I took more during the summer, because now that I have more time, and mostly I teach kids basically any level up until probably to 2100 rating. I have students in almost every rating range, and in the lessons I usually first of all do an analysis of what they want to work on or what they need to work on. So my very first thing that I would probably do is I have a session with them where we look over their games, or even sometimes just their losses, just to pinpoint the weakness and what we really need to work on. And then later I make kind of a program or a lesson plan of what they specifically need to focus on to improve. And yeah, sometimes if they ask me to help with one specific opening, I would do that instead. If one of them really wants to work on endgames, we'll work on that. So it's basically it's different for every student. I find it just depends on what they need or what they want to work on.
Okay, excellent. So do you run mostly one-on-one coaching, or do you do group coaching as well?
I have experience with group coaching, but it's most for me. I mostly do one-on-one coaching.
One-on-one. Okay. All right, excellent, excellent. Good to know. So where can people reach you if they want to know more about your coaching? If they want to get in touch with you, where can people find you?
Honestly, on any social media works. Facebook or Instagram, you can. It's probably possible to just find me by my name, or also my email. I don't know. I could say it. DEMCHSVET0410
Okay.
But probably easier through social media.
Social media, okay. Do you have a favorite social media platform?
I don't use either that much, but probably Instagram. That's
okay. Instagram, okay. All right, excellent. So people know where to reach you. So that's good. Thank you for your time. So I know you have a game to share with us. Maybe we can go into that.
sure. I'm gonna try to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, yes. So this is good.
I'm gonna try. Okay, I'll just keep it here. So yeah, basically, this game, I try to pick a more or less recent game, and the game I'm about to show comes from the 2019 World Youth Chess Championship, which was held last year in Mumbai, in India. And in this game, I was paired to play against a very strong opponent who is one of India's top girl players, and she was also the third seed in my section of this tournament. And since this was the penultimate round, there was a lot of pressure here as well. Sorry, I'll go to the very beginning. So the game started with e4, knight of 6. So this was a completely unexpected opening choice. At least for me, it was very unexpected. It's the Alekhine defense, which my opponent didn't usually play, so I wasn't really preparing myself for it. So it's, some of you may know that it's an opening that doesn't get played that often at the top level. So people mostly use it as a surprise weapon, but not as their main opening. So I think that's what my opponent was trying to do here, is she was trying to surprise me with it. And well, I try to do that sometimes myself too. I like playing the Alekhine sometimes from time to time as well. So I knew quite a few lines here since I used to play it as black as well. And I just went for whichever line I remembered and I thought was the most unpleasant one. And on move 10, so we're gonna go through. Basically, the idea in the Alekhine defense is that black kind of spends quite a lot of time jumping around with the knight from f6 to d5 and to b6, and the idea behind it is black lets white build a strong center, after which black is going to start attacking it and trying to make weaknesses in it. So black would get probably good and a bit faster development, but instead a lot less space, which is the whole drawback of the opening. So if white is able to keep that space advantage, white usually should be better. So up until this point, this was all theory, and from here I diverted from it a little bit and played bishop e2 on the 10th move. The main theoretical line was to play d5 right away and to get even more space in the center. Okay. After which black would probably end up going here with the knight, and the following, something like this would be one of the main alternatives here. And this position is considered quite a bit better for white because of the space advantage and a better pawn structure. Instead, I switched up the move order a little bit. We still got a similar situation, but I decided to switch it up since I didn't really want to go for the main line, since I assumed my opponent would be prepared for it. And at this point, my opponent made a very typical move for this opening, but in this specific situation, it was a slight inaccuracy. So she played bishop f5, but a better one would be e5, just to fight for the center right away, which is also one of the main ideas of this opening. This can lead to a somewhat equal endgame after the queen trade and the knight trade. So if we arrive at this position, like I said, it's about an equal endgame, and that's usually considered a pretty good outcome for black in the Alekhine defense. Is if you equalize, that's considered a good result. But instead, she played bishop to f5, which kind of lets me get a lot of space, which is why it would be a slight inaccuracy. So something to think about here, which at least this was my realization, is that specific preparation against a specific opponent does not always guarantee that you would get a good result or a good position, because you never know, it might work out, but there's a good chance that it might also not, and you can be surprised back, which I think my opponent was slightly surprised that I didn't go for the main line here. I think at the beginner level or even my level, obviously for top players, opening preparation plays a huge role, but I think for the majority of players, it doesn't, at least in my opinion. So in this game, I was completely surprised out of the opening and basically had to play on my own from move 2. But at the end of the day, it didn't really matter who surprised who. So at least personally, I think preparation is not as important as general knowledge. And that's what I tell all my students, because the games don't get decided in the openings anyway. So in my opinion, it's worth spending more time on improving your overall play in other parts of the game rather than preparing specific lines. So yeah, the game continued with me playing d5. So I still went for the similar idea, which this wasn't theory for neither of us anymore. And from now on, we were just playing the middle game. And like I said, I think the preparation worked kind of against her because this isn't the opening that she usually played. And so we just got a middle game. We came out of the opening and in a position which she probably wasn't as familiar with, and I wasn't either. But at the end of the day, it was the middle game and then the end game play that decided the whole game and not the whole opening preparation. So at this point, the usual, I'm attacking the knight, so the knight would have to move, and the usual place for the knight in this opening is usually knight is on e5. But here the problem with the knight coming here is that I could start a little pawn storm, and the bishop and the knight would find themselves kind of uncomfortable here. The bishop would have to retreat all the way to c8 to keep the d7 square open. If the bishop goes to d7 right away, then f4 would actually trap this knight, and it would have nowhere to go and no d7 square to come back to. So the bishop would have to go back all the way to c8, and after which I would kick the knight as well, and all of black's pieces would have to come back. And that's one of the drawbacks, is that black would have close to no space and really strange piece development as well. So this regular development doesn't work, which is one of the drawbacks of this bishop f5 move that she played. It gives me some time to start advancing my pawns. So instead, my opponent played a better move and played knight to b4. That's a better square for the knight. Now the threat was to take on c3 with this bishop and then capture the pawn on a2, which I defended against by playing a3. So now The funny thing here is that there was a tactic with which black could win a rook. So if black takes my knight, I'll take back, and then knight goes to a2. So this looks like the rook has it looks like the rook has no squares left here.
That's right.
Yeah, it looks like the rook has no squares left here. All of these are controlled by the black pieces, but actually I could manage to get 2 pieces in exchange for my rook. So first I get the bishop, and now turns out that this knight is trapped, so I will actually get a second piece for it. So this wouldn't have to be a rook sacrifice, which I saw and she saw as well, and decided not to give away 2 pieces for the rook, and instead retreated her knight. I continued development, and we just both continued to improve our pieces here. And now I decided to take even more space with b4. So this is not really a mistake or anything, but I think it's a bit of an overextension, and I already have a lot of space, and I could have just played something like castling, and this would have been better and faster for my development. But I played this, and that gave away this a4 square for the knight. Again, I should still be better in positionally here, but it gives black some counterplay. At this point, I had to make a decision whether I wanted to trade the knight or go somewhere else. Here, the right choice was to actually not trade it and to play knight e4. So there's this rule that says exchanges are beneficial for the side with less space. So in this opening, it's usually white who has more space. And so this way, it made more sense to actually avoid this trade and keep black's pieces right here defending each other. This is there's a term called superfluous piece. So it's usually used by Dvoretsky. It's a famous author. I never really heard anyone else use it.
Yeah, I've never heard that too before.
It's used by Mark Dvoretsky. He always says that whenever he's explaining something similar. So a superfluous piece basically means that when there are 2 pieces that kind of have the same goal, so for example, these 2 knights, they both want to be on the a4 square, or at least that's where they're heading. They're both headed right now. Mm-hmm. And one of them is always stuck defending the other and not really doing anything else that's useful. So one of the knights is taking up the square where the other knight wants to be. So once I exchange it, that gives purpose to the second knight, while I also got rid of one of my pieces. So now there's only one knight there for black, and that's a lot better than having just 2 knights just kind of defending each other and not doing anything. So that's why it made more sense to avoid the trade, not just for that reason, but also for the reason that I have more space and I should avoid trades, because that makes opponent's pieces more cramped if he's the one who has less.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Those are good points that I didn't even know myself. So that's good.
Yeah. So anyway, I decided to trade the knight, which makes it slightly easier for black, but it's still a pretty good position because I have more space. Now I played bishop f3, so my idea was to play c5 and to advance my pawns even more on the queen side here, because that's where my space advantage lies. So I needed the bishop to protect that d5 pawn and make c5 happen. Another idea that could be possible in this type of position is h4. And I also considered it because I haven't committed to castling yet, so I could potentially start an attack on the king side here by playing h5 and maybe opening up some files. But I decided to go for another plan instead, with attacking on the queen side. Now my opponent played bishop c8, which looks like a really passive move, but it was kind of necessary. That gives an extra defense, an extra attack on the d5 pawn. So that makes my d5 impossible because d5 my c5 impossible because d5 would be hanging.
Okay.
So that was the point behind this bishop c8 move, to open up the queen. But of course, it is passive, and it makes black's development a lot harder. I continued playing normal moves. I decided to trade one of black's good pieces, the fianchetto bishop on g7. It's usually a good idea to trade it because that reduces opponent's king safety. So that's what I tried to do in this game. And now black decided it was time to hit the center and open things up here. So e5 happened. I took the pawn. We got a few trades going on, and queen went to f6. So it may look like I just won a pawn, but I didn't really want to keep it. I could have taken here with check, and technically I would be up a pawn here. But what I didn't like about this position was that first of all, my knight is under attack on d4, and most importantly is that my king is not castled yet, and the center is all wide open. So one of the key principles in the opening is that you need to get your king to safety. And here I would be kind of violating that principle and taking the pawn instead of worrying about my king being safe. So I decided it wasn't really worth it struggling like this for just a pawn, and I played queen e3 instead, and let black just take the pawn back, which was a better decision. And finally I decided to castle, because with the more or less open center like this, castling is a safer choice for the king. Here already, at this point, we can kind of look at the position and compare whose pieces are better. And the reason why in this position I have a slight advantage is because of, first of all, black's pieces and the weaknesses. So black has 3 weaknesses here. First one is on b7, there is one on d6, and one on e6. I only have one, c4. It could be a weakness. It could also be a good thing because it's looking towards the center. And although the piece development is roughly equivalent, other than black's bishop not being developed, it's the weaknesses that make the position better for me. So it was already necessary for black to do something radical like d5 and take some action in the center. Although this resulting position that would have happened would still be really tough to defend with my rook on the 7th file and this d5 weakness. But instead, black plays queen f7, which is a mistake. It doesn't blunder anything in particular, but it's a mistake because black is still underdeveloped, still has weaknesses, and she's spending time on just retreating the queen instead of doing something for development. And this gave me a little tactical opportunity as well. So I played knight b5, and this is an interesting fork because, well, the first target is obvious, it's the pawn on d6, but the second target was on a7 actually. So I would be threatening to take on a7, which actually ended up happening when my opponent played rook d8 and defended one of the weaknesses. But again, best thing to do was to take action in the center, because that would give at least a bit more counterplay. Although that wouldn't have solved all of black's problems anyway, but at least when you have weaknesses, you need to try to get rid of them. Yeah, so I played knight to b5, and that was a double attack which she couldn't defend against. Defended the pawn on d6, but I was still able to capture the one on a7. So this is a little tactic. The thing is, if black takes back my rook, I have queen b6, and that actually makes things even worse because now 2 rooks are under attack, and that's yet another fork. So my opponent didn't take it and just removed the knight instead, after which I made a little exchange, and now this is the position that we arrived to. Here,
so tell us a little bit about the exchange. Why did you exchange the bishop that seemed to be bad?
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. This bishop wasn't really developed the whole game, but I exchanged it. I exchanged it for a few reasons actually. Firstly, I didn't really want to spend time to bringing my knight somewhere else because it would take time for me to bring it back to b5 and then maybe somewhere else more useful. And but most importantly, I wanted to get rid of this bishop. Although it looks like a bad piece, it was actually one of the main defender of black's weaknesses. So the weakness on b7 is securely defended by the bishop, and so is the one on e6. So I wanted to get rid of that bishop because that makes it easier for me to attack those two now that black doesn't have a light squared bishop. And I have my bishop attacking it and the queen, and I soon brought more pieces into defending it. But yeah, but that was a good question because the bishop did seem bad. Yeah, so this situation, it looks like I'm only up a pawn, but the position is already completely winning, at least according to the computer. But of course, we're not computers, so nobody would actually resign here because it's only a pawn. But the main reason for my big advantage here is not even the pawn, but it's the piece activity and the pawn structure as well. So if we look at piece activity, rooks and queens roughly the same, but the big difference is looking at this knight against this bishop. This bishop is a much better piece. It does a lot here, and it could even transfer itself to attacking more things, whereas this knight is standing on the edge of the board and doesn't have many prospects of where it could go. So that's a big difference in piece activity here. And of course, I also have more targets to attack. Like I said, the big weaknesses are those two, and d6 is also one of them. So black just has a lot more weaknesses, and I just have a better piece here. And the extra pawn is actually not the decisive factor here. It's the rest of the weaknesses. So the rest of the game just continued with me kind of attacking those weaknesses from one to one. So I had the weakness on e6, then I started attacking the one on d6. And there's this principle, and some of you may have heard, it's called the principle of two weaknesses. So when the opponent has one weakness on, let's say, one side of the board, you're going to want to try to create a second one somewhere else so that you have two targets that you're switching between. And once you attack both of them, it makes your opponent's defense a lot harder, other than just defending one main thing. And that is really helping me here because I actually have three weaknesses that I can switch between. The one here, the one here, and the one here. And I actually could have won in an even faster way by creating another weakness and playing h4 and later h5 and creating a weakness here on the king side as well. So with the principle that I'm bringing up, it basically just means that once you see one weakness that the opponent has, try to create a second one because that just makes the defense a lot harder.
I think that's an important point too.
Yeah, so that's what I kept trying to do here, just switching in between the weaknesses and tying black's pieces to the defense. So that's why at this point of the game, it's a bit of shuffling around. I'm still figuring out what I want to attack. This would have been a slight improvement for black compared to the position a few moves ago, because now at least the knight is back on d7 instead of being on a4. So now at least the knight is back in the game. But instead, this is how the game unfolded, and finally, I got to take my second pawn, and this one of the weaknesses just ended up being really hard to defend. In case black defends passively with something like knight f8, it does defend the weaknesses for a moment, but again, it's passive, and I understand my opponent's perspective there too. I'm like that too. I would rather give away a pawn or something, but at least get some sort of counterplay instead of just defending like this the whole game. And besides, I have probably something like c5, and it is still a completely dominating position. So instead, she decided to give me the second pawn, which I calculated that it was safe to take. And now I play this queen e1 move, which looks strange, but the point was that I want to clear the space for my rook to come in front of the queen, and to so that there will no longer be that pin on this bishop, won't be pinned to my queen. So that's why I moved that far away. So she tried to make the pin work, but now I placed the rook on a defended square on e3 here so that this pin wouldn't exist anymore. And now at this point I'm up 2 pawns, and the rest was basically just a matter of technique. I'll go over it quickly because there was a nice tactic in the end. So I just kept improving pieces, made sure everything was safe, and later started pushing my pawns. That's where my advantage lies here. The whole game I have more space here, and I also managed to win a pawn there. So I was basically just trying to create a passed pawn. And at this point, the position again it's already winning. So we continued. There's not really much to stop here. And now this was, at this point, I decided to sacrifice my queen because I would be getting a second one here on a8. That was just a nice moment that I actually gave away my queen here on f6, and didn't promote my own yet for a few moves, but it wasn't necessary because there's no way for this queen to ever get onto a8, and there's no way to stop me from promoting, and that's when my opponent resigned, because once I promote to the queen, I'll be up a rook and a few pawns. So with this game, this win gave me a chance to finish this tournament in 5th place. This wasn't the last round, but it gave me good chances to be in the top 10. Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite games from that tournament.
Well, that's a beautiful game. Well played against a very strong opponent. So she's rated 22-27. Oh, that's good. That's really good. And thank you for the lesson. Your chess knowledge is so strong. I learned quite a lot just listening to you analyze this game in terms of the principle of the 2 weaknesses, the fact that you don't exchange pieces if you have more space. You try to avoid exchanging pieces. You mentioned one other concept about the 2 knights defending each other. I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, that wasn't the perfect example of it because it usually works like better with like an actual outpost, but yeah, it was similar. It was similar there.
Okay, excellent. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This was excellent. It's so great to interview you. I think this is going to be very useful to a lot of our fans and chess community in general. They have a lot to learn from you, to learn from your story, and someone to look up to, particularly for the girls that are coming up, looking up to playing chess. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to more collaborations in the future.